In this video, I'm going to show you how to create drum patterns like that from Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. At the time of recording, Nirvana was made up of Kurt Cobain on vocals and guitar, Chris Novoselic on bass, and of course the legendary Dave Grohl on drums. When I first heard this song, the riff hooked me, but the drum parts was what really made me enjoy this song. Dave Grohl's playing is the heartbeat of this track, and today we're going to break it all down piece by piece. Right, enough talking, let's get stuck into the drum patterns. There's 7 distinctive drum sounds used in this song. You've got the kick, the snare, the open hi-hat, the closed hi-hat, the floor tom, and 2 crashes. The track is written in 4/4 time with a tempo of 117 BPM. The song structure revolves around 5 main drum sections. Well, technically 6. Some of these sections have subtle variations, and so we'll break them down step by step. The first one we have is the intro fill. The song kicks off with a 4-bar intro, and the drum pattern comes in with a fill starting on the 4th bar. And here's how you build it. So you first have the kick drum, which is played on the E and the R of beats 1, 2, and 3, but it's also played on the and of beat 4. Following that, we've got the snare drum. The snare is played on every beat as a flam. And a flam is just 2 strokes played almost simultaneously, just like this. Now in your door, you can just place the first stroke on the beat and then nudge the second stroke ever so slightly for you to get that loose flam fill. Lastly, we've got the hi-hat, which is played on the and of beats 1, 2, and 3. Let's make this drum pattern and listen to how it sounds. And now we move on to the second section. This section forms the backbone of the choruses, but it's also played in parts of the intro and the outro as well. There are 4 slight variations within this section, and we'll go through all of them. It's worth mentioning that the first pattern is the main pattern here, and all the other ones are variations of this pattern. So for the first pattern, we've got the kick drum that starts on beat 1 and the R of beat 1. It continues on beat 3, plus the and the R of beat 3 as well. We also add a final hit to the and of beat 4. But the snare drum is played on beat 2, the R of beat 2, the E of beat 3, and on beat 4. As for the hi-hat and crash cymbals, we have a crash that lands on the first beat of every bar, and our open hi-hats are played on beats 2, 3, and 4. And we just repeat this entire pattern for all the bars. Let's make this and listen to it. So now we move on to pattern 2. The only difference between this pattern and the first one is that it has a drum fill in the 4th bar. And so to do that, we remove the open hi-hats to create space for the fill. And Dave likely also removed the open hi-hat because this is used to transition into quieter sections of the song, like the verse. The kick also goes through some changes. We add an additional kick on beat 1, the R of beat 1, and the and of beat 2. And so does the snare. So it features a 16-note run from the and of beat 3 to the end of the bar. Let me make those adjustments and we can listen to it. So pattern 3 is like pattern 1, but with a high energy twist to it. We replace the open hi-hats on beat 2, 3, and 4 with crashes for added energy. The rest remains the same as pattern 1. Let's play 2 bars of pattern 1 and then 2 bars of pattern 3 so you can hear the difference. And then we have the final pattern of this section. It includes a kick and hi-hat on beat 3 of the 4th bar. It also incorporates 16 notes on the snare from the E of beat 3 to the end of the bar. Since this is quite similar to pattern 1, I'm only going to play the last 2 bars of pattern 4. And now we move on to section 3. This is the drum parts for the verse and the pre-chorus. Again, as usual, we start off with a bass pattern. The kick drum is played on beats 1 and the and of beat 1. It continues on beat 3 and the and of beat 3. We then play the snare drum on beats 2 and 4. And for the hi-hats, we have to play 8 notes all through except on the and of beat 4 in the second and fourth bars. And why are we doing this? Because we're going to switch it up with the hi-hats. Another thing we'll also do for some extra dynamics is we'll set all the closed hi-hats to the same level, but for the hi-hat notes on the and of the second and fourth beats, we'll play them at a higher velocity. Now, one of the things I'll say is to avoid the open hi-hats bleeding into the next bar, set the closed and open hi-hats to the same choke group in your DAW. Let me make this pattern and we'll play through it. So now we've got pattern 2. So we take out the close hi-hats and then add 16 notes open hi-hats throughout. We also had a crash on the first beat of bars 1 and 3. I think since this is the pre-chorus, I can imagine Grohl played it in this way to build some energy into the chorus. What I'll do is I'll play the first 2 bars of pattern 1 and then all of pattern 2 to show you the difference. Now we move on to pattern 3. This is also similar to pattern 2, but we only added drum fill in the fourth bar. In this pattern, Dave is even adding more energy to the song because he switches up the kick patterns a bit and adds a drum fill in the fourth bar. So we play 16 notes on the snare from beat 1 to the and of beat 3. And for the kick, we add 8 notes on the and of every second beat. But also for the fourth bar, we add a kick on the R of the third beat. We finish this off with a flam on the snare on beat 4. He also didn't play any hi-hats during the fourth bar, and that made the drum feel a lot more punchy and tight. I'll play the last 2 bars of each of these patterns to show Grohl's progression on the verse and pre-chorus sections. Now we move on to the post-chorus phrase. This 4-bar phrase appears after the first 2 choruses and is one of the most explosive parts of the song because of the clever dynamics. So let's break it down bar by bar. For the first bar, we've got a kick on beat 1 and the and of beat 1. Then we follow up with 2 16-note triplets on the second and an R of beat 2. Remember, we're counting this as triplets, that particular beat as triplets, so the second one. And then we have a 16th note on the and of beat 3. So we add a snare on beats 2 and 3. For the hi-hats, we have the open hi-hat on the and of beat 1 and hits on beat 2 and 3. To stop the hi-hat from bleeding into the rest, which is on the fourth beat, we place a closed foot hi-hat on beat 4. Remember, our hi-hats are on the same choke group, so this should help. This creates a clean choke and matches the recording. This would help us create the clean choke that we hear in the recording. And obviously, we've got the crash on beat 1. Now, before we play the first bar, I'm also going to run us through the third bar. This is because it's quite identical with just one minor difference. And this is where he switches the 2 16th note triplets on the and R of beat 2 for a single 16th note on the R of beat 2. So what I'm going to do is make the patterns for bar 3 and 1, and we'll play through this so we can hear the differences. So those are the patterns. Now we'll move on to bar 2 and bar 4. Now for bar 2, we start off with a kick where we add 16 notes on beats 1 and of beat 1. We follow this up with 8 notes for the R of beat 2 to the end of the bar. As for the snare, we add hits on beats 2 and 3. But the snare hit on beat 3 would be a flam. Then we add a new thing we haven't used so far, the floor toms. So we add the floor tom on beat 3, but this is a flammed floor tom. And finally with the hi-hats, we add hits on the and of beats 3 and 4. And again with bar 4, some similarities. The differences are that on the kick, we add 8 notes all through from beat 1 to beat 3. And then for the snare, we just have a hit on beat 2, and then 16 notes from the and of beat 3 to the end of the bar. Finally, we add some open hi-hats on beats 2 and 3. So let's put all these 4 bars together. I'm gonna add one of the chorus drum parts leading into this section so you know how it sounds. And now we move on to section 5. Well, section 5 and 6. This section forms the outro of the song. Section 5 has 2 patterns, and we'll cover those. So for the first pattern in section 5, each bar is the same. We've got the kick, where we play 16 notes on beats 1 and R of beat 1. Then the R of beat 2, then the and R of beat 3, and the and of beat 2. Following that, we've got the snare, and it's just quarter notes on beats 2, 3, and 4. And finally for the crash, we've got quarter notes which are played on every beat for the first crash, and then a second crash which has a different tone on beat 1. Before I make pattern 1, I'm going to talk about pattern 2 as well, which is just a very slight difference on the 4th bar. And in the 4th bar, we just replace the snare played on beat 4 with a flam and remove the crash. Since pattern 1 and pattern 2 are quite similar, I'll just make pattern 2 and play it. So there you have it. These are the iconic drum parts from Smells Like Teen Spirit. If you found this breakdown helpful or mildly entertaining, hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other songs you'd like me to cover. As always, the links in the Ableton files and sounds are in the description. I'll see you in the next one.